8 to 10 people, right? And they're going to get together and they want to make this process easy. And this was originally actually designed with one of our very first licensees, right? They said, Carly, I believe everybody can see the screen now. Chris, you can see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. You may want to try restarting your computer quickly or just closing the window and popping back into the meeting. So this was originally started with one of our very first licensees, and they came to us and said, hey, you know, we go to these flavor houses all the time and we try a lot of products and we want to make this process really easy, right? And so what I want to do is walk through a couple of things. One, the thing that we added for them, this was way back in very early 2015. And then I want to show you some new features that we added last year that I actually think even work slightly better, okay? So let's go ahead and do that. So the first one is really this cutting approach, right? And I'm going to go ahead and walk through that. I'm going to click edit, and I'm just going to walk through this process really quickly, and I'm going to explain how I set this up, right? So I set this up as an on-site test, right? So this would be on computers that you have control over. I set it up at my San Francisco location, and I set it up for self-check-in, meaning that RedJade will track who answered the questionnaire, which is really key in this type of test, right? You want to know who answered the question. And I'm going to auto assign the rows, which just means the next design block row will be assigned. Now you will notice I did do this as a cutting test, right? Now the cutting test, it has two unique features that are only available in a cutting test. So one is the serving order is unenforced by default. What that means is that when you get to the design block, you still make a design block. However, by default, the individuals do not have to follow that design block. They can really grab any product out of the middle of the table. It's labeled with a 3-digit code or a letter or anything that RedJade will recognize. You type in that code. RedJade validates what product that is, so it knows 386 is product 1. And it is going to allow you, and it's going to let you start your survey, right? So that's the cutting approach. It does this unenforced serving order by default. The other thing is that it allows you to retype in that code and pull up your answer sheet with your answers already completed. And that aids in discussion, right? So that you can talk about those products in that small group. What we've tried to do here is take what is typically more of a qualitative process and allow you to store it somewhere where people can easily access it, right? Most of the time, in my experiences, that's somebody or a couple people taking notes, and those notes disappear, never to be found again. This allows you to keep those notes right with your project. So let's just walk through this really quickly and how it's set up. So here we have on-site, self-check-in, San Francisco, which I showed you. You put as many participants as you need. I just put a couple here, 100, right? You can put as many as you need. We schedule our tests, so I scheduled mine for now so that I can go ahead and show you what this looks like. I made a super simple questionnaire. Now you'll see the difference here is I set it to verify, right? Now remember, RedJade has 3 ways that you can set up your questionnaire. You can set it to verify, which allows the individual to type in the code, and RedJade validates that code. So they have to type in the code for the product, right? What most people use in RedJade, about 80 to 85%, is they use confirm, which just says you should have sample 656 in front of you. Now, the reason that doesn't work with an unenforced serving order is you want to be able to grab any product out of the middle of the table and type in the code. You don't want to have to evaluate the products in a specific order, right? And then, of course, you can skip any validation as well. All right, last step is our design block. Now you'll notice because it's a cutting test, we do have this option of enforced serving order, and this enforced serving order is set to no. Okay, so let's go ahead really quickly, go back to our desktop. Our test is launched. So let's go ahead and just open up surveys.redjade.net. And my computer is set up in the San Francisco site. And I'm going to go ahead and start, right? So let's just do, I can either use the person's email address or their code, right? So in recruiting, I have two ways somebody can use self-check-in. They can either use their email address or their code for self-check-in. They do need to exist as a subject in recruiting. And now from here, I'm going to go ahead and click begin. Right, so I click begin. It validates, it knows who I am, right? So that when I go back and look at these answers later, I know that Paige Aguirre looked at these products, right? So I can enter any code. Now my code for 1001, so I'm going to be the first person to evaluate products. If I look at my code, you can see Paige Aguirre is 1001. And the first product Paige would see if we were enforcing serving order would be 583. But let's say I don't grab 583. I instead grab 869. I can type that in, I click start questionnaire, and it's going to validate my questionnaire, right? Now I just made overall liking with some line scales. Tastes great. I don't like to do big answers here. Let's fill out one more questionnaire. Now we'll do 583. I keep questionnaires short for these types of webinars. Salty. And I'm going to click next. Now let's say I'm going to go ahead and do my last sample really quickly, 340, and you guys can see that I set my palette cleanse screen to 0 so that I could easily hop product to product. Okay, so now you'll see I get another option on my end screen where it says I'm finished. If you click I'm finished, you cannot go back in and continue to evaluate products, right? But what you can do is if I now am the panel moderator and I say, hey, everybody type in 869 and click enter, this allows you to open up your questionnaire and you can see I like this very much. I rated it pretty high on sweetness and pretty low on saltiness and said it tastes great, right? Now, the individual can change their answers in this case, okay? So something to note, if you are doing this test as a cutting test, is those answers can be changed. So now what I want to show you is another approach to this, right? So I also set up this other test, and let's go back to our desktop. I set up this other test, and you'll see here, this is set up as an acceptance test. Okay, so I set this up here as an acceptance test. I'm going to go ahead and edit it really quickly so we can walk through. I made it an anonymous link so anybody can fill out the survey, right? A lot of times when you are tasting products with a small group of people, those people, you may not be able to easily port your station computers to where that benchtop screening is, right? This allows the individuals to easily use their computers, even and without registering them, right? All they need to do is type in this very short URL, surveys.redjay.net/my code, RJD/review, which is this test's code, right? And I'm just going to copy this to my clipboard. We'll click next. I created 20 participants. Again, doesn't matter too much here. I schedule my test to be active for the next 25 days, right? And then I created 2 questionnaires, and this is what I want to go over with you really quickly, right? So I created the same questionnaire that I used in the other section. So overall opinion, sweetness, saltiness, and comments. Now here's the trick to this approach. This is the review table approach, right? So here, what I did is I will click this add questions button on the review table, and I added from my page elements, I added a review table. Okay, so this is in the basic library, page elements, review table, right? So let's go ahead and add it and I'll show you how you use it, right? So from here, you can source questions from other surveys. So I'm going to go ahead and click here. I'm going to grab overall opinion. I'm going to grab sweetness. I'm going to grab saltiness, and I'm going to grab additional comments, right? Now I'm going to edit these because I don't want this big long column header, right? So I'm just going to write overall opinion, sweetness, saltiness, and let's keep this short and just put comments, okay? And I'm going to turn this vertical. All right, I'm going to go ahead and delete the first one I made. They're the same now. Okay, so that's how you pull in answers. You see, those were the questions from my single questionnaire, my single sample questionnaire. I also added a timer in case individuals get to this page at different points in time. What you want to do is you want to create a timer so that people can't finish this survey when you still want to talk to them. Yes, you can absolutely. There's a question about, can you do an anonymous link with the original type of survey? Absolutely. Yes. The cutting type of test works with basically, I think, all of the different RegJade tests that are available. All 6 RegJade tests will work with a cutting test. All 6 ways of delivering surveys. Okay. So I would just suggest you have a required questionnaire timer here. It doesn't matter how long the timer is. If you wanted to make it 30,000 seconds and make it so it auto advances just so it closes the survey eventually, you can absolutely do that. Okay. I just kept it fairly short here at 300 seconds. You want to lock the people on this page so that you can easily talk about the products. You do not want them to accidentally click next and close the questionnaire. Okay, so that's a key step here. Let's save this and move on to our next step. Our next step is our design block, and this requires you to group the samples together, right? So the samples have to be in a group. And remember, we do that by taking a sample, dragging to the middle, right? And you'll see the middle turns blue. We group our samples together and then we link the review table after. What that does is it will automatically read in the answers from that group into the review table. Okay, that is a key step again, is making sure that you have this group of products in the review table linked. And just, there's a new feature here. You can actually color by sample if you want to, and it puts the samples back to their original colors. We click approve and we click submit. And I've already launched this test. So I'm just going to open up an incognito window, and I'll just give you a little trick here. So I have my computer set up for the San Francisco site. I don't want to wipe that cookie by launching another test over it. So I just set up an incognito window and launch, right? So this would even allow you to launch an anonymous link test on your booth stations, as long as you launch those into an incognito window or in private browsing or whatever each company calls their non-cookie saving link. Okay, in Chrome, it's an incognito window. I click enter, and it's going to go ahead. It's going to start my survey, and I will really quickly fill out these questions so that you can see how review table works. I'll fill them out as quickly as I am able. So let's go ahead and click I agree. I chose to have a study participant agreement. I set this questionnaire up as confirmed, so it tells me to grab 340, right? I'll go ahead and fill out my questionnaire. Okay, let's click next. Let's pop on to our next questionnaire. All right, last questionnaire. Sorry, filling out questionnaires is a bit boring to watch. So let's go ahead and do our last one here. Okay, so when I click next on this survey, it's going to take me to my review table survey automatically, and it's going to give me a table with all of my answers to aid in discussion. Now, the advantage of this test is that the person cannot go back and change their answers, right? Their answers are locked in, and you can easily see here that you could discuss each product. You can compare the products right next to each other. Does the review table need to be on its own questionnaire? So let me answer your questions. So the review table does not need to be on its own questionnaire if you just want to pull answers from previous questions within that own sample. The review table does need to exist on its own non-sample questionnaire if you want to pull multiple sample questions forward, like I did. You cannot pull questions from other tests. You can only pull questions from within the same sample on a sample questionnaire, or across multiple samples the way I just showed you.